All right, everyone, we're gonna kick off in a couple of minutes. So if you can take a seat, we'll start shortly. Okay, welcome everyone to our first meeting of 2022. Okay, so we do have a few people dialing in online because they've been trapped because of the rain, or they're dialing in from areas outside Sydney. So hopefully they can hear us. But yeah, great to be back after, I'm pretty sure it's been 2 years since we've actually been in here because of the constant COVID cancellation. So great to see you all. As always, thank you to all of our affiliates. I need to update that list because I think it has been 6 months. We've had a few new affiliates join up, and also to our industry associations, particularly Fire Rescue New South Wales. Tonight we've got Mark Porter here, so look forward to hearing him speak. And then we're starting to try and build some ties with the different master plumbers associations, just to work in a little bit better with them. Also, thank you to our corporate members for your support. A reminder that money is going towards education, so that provides some of the funding towards producing the new course notes for the diploma and whatever else we decide is fitting to train the next generation, to help train them. So for tonight's meeting, I'll run through just our usual updates. Then we have a water demand research update from James Gong at Deakin University. So he'll be presenting online from Melbourne. And then we have Mark Porter going through AS2419 2021. So our committee report. So emails since our last online meeting, which was back in November. So we've sent out a few CPD notes from the ABCB. Just to fill everyone in, the ABCB have, I believe how it works is they've got a bit of a grant from the federal government to produce CPD material for a variety of industries out there. So for plumbers, for engineers, for consultants, for architects. So I have sat on, and Martine, I think Martine's dialing online actually. Martine sat on a few committees to try and develop content for both plumbers and hydraulic consultants in separate committees, but obviously that content can cross over between the two. So the one that we did just send out last week was on heated water and the Plumbing Code of Australia. But the government is actually proactively trying to produce, from the multiple 4-hour meetings I've sat in, they are genuinely trying to produce some good content to help, train plumbers and engineers and consultants. So I believe I've done one of the courses and it actually was good. It was on performance solutions. I haven't done the heated water one, so if anyone here has, you can tell me about it later, but I do think they've done quite a good job in producing that material. So yeah, emails in the last 3 months. Oh, that was bad. Sorry about that. There we go, back up and running. So NCC Fundamentals for Engineers from the ABCB back in November. Then we had our Tasmania Industry Night. So Ryan Petkovich, who used to live in New South Wales, now lives in Tassie. He's actually, for anyone who doesn't know, he's just had his first child 2 days ago, a little boy. So if you know him, send him your congratulations. And if you're keen to go down to Tassie now that most of the borders, even WA is open now, isn't it? So you can even go there. But yeah, if you want to go down to Tassie, get in touch with Ryan. He'd be keen to have you down there for a meeting. And I think they had about 30 people, and that was held at Reese Plumbing down in Hobart. And the next one will be Hobart Showground, which is later this month. But anyone's welcome to go down there. So we've had In the Spotlight, which again for the affiliates, if you've missed out a bit during COVID, we tried to make it easier for affiliates to communicate with consulting firms, engineering firms that wouldn't let them into the office because of COVID restrictions. So with all the affiliates we have, every affiliate should be able to once a year, it's your opportunity to promote your company, a new product, whatever it is about you. You just need to contact M, put yourself into the waiting list. And every week we aim to send out an email and a LinkedIn post advertising your company, your product, whatever it is that you want to sell. So it's an opportunity to really market what you do. So that was, so Jebret was back in November. That was the email that went out. So we have had a few people, a few empty spots where we just haven't had anyone waiting, but that's an opportunity for you to use if you want to. So sometimes we have a queue of 12 businesses and other times it's empty, but just encourage you to get in touch with them. And if no one else throws their hand up, you could advertise twice in 1 year. So Saniflow did have planned a hands-on event to have down here in Sydney for us all to go along and pull apart a Saniflow unit, see how they work. That will be held later this year. It was meant to be this month, I believe, but they ended up cancelling it just because of that was back in January when some of the COVID stuff started to float around again. But we will send out a new invite for that when they schedule a new date. FP004, so the sprinkler committee, AS 2118.1. There, Mark Cummings did put out an email for anyone to put forward any comments. So just a reminder on any standard, if anyone notices anything that they would like to put comments forward on, just send them through to M and then we can push them through to the relevant committee for consideration for future changes. Fire hydrant systems in new premises. Mark might be able to touch on that briefly, but I understand the basis of that was Fire Rescue New South Wales have basically endorsed AS 2419/2021 from their point of view, which would mean that if a fire engineer wants to use that new standard, it doesn't need to go through the formal FEBQ process. If it's just a simple clause in the new standard, it sort of helps to simplify the fire engineering process a bit. Is that right, Mark?
The requirement, I haven't looked at it, typically is you guys apply with all
Oh, so you're going to comply with the whole standard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you so if you're going to just say
Okay.
We shouldn't be too hard.
Okay. So I know one that was regularly used, and other people know this, but the 70-meter rule versus instead of the 60 plus 10, a lot of people will adopt the 70-meter rule out of 2017 to avoid, having to get other formal concessions, and that was commonly used for the last few years. So CPD session. So again, we have our fortnightly CPD sessions Tuesdays at lunch. We get anywhere from 30 to probably 75 consultants dial into those meetings, and that's another opportunity for you to promote a new product. Those again, there should be a position for each company to present once a year, but just contact them if you're keen to do a CPD session on one of those Tuesdays. So now we're up to tonight. So we had our invite for tonight's meeting, that ABCB's course on heated water systems. So that went out a couple of weeks ago if anyone missed it. Then we have our guidance notes, which I'll touch on again shortly. The March Adelaide general meeting, which is next Tuesday night, which again is open to anyone who wants to fly over to Adelaide and attend. Some draft guidelines that we've put out, which we've had in the works for probably 10 years, but instead of putting them out in full, we've just called them a draft version. It's about 50 pages, the design guide that we have, and hopefully we can get feedback from the industry and turn that into a non-draft document. But to get it out there, we've just put draft on there. And then the Hobart general meeting that I mentioned is on at the end of this month on Thursday the 31st. So the HCAA notes, so these are just a few things I've written down from our committee meeting we had last week. The Design and Building Practitioners Act, which a lot of people know now applies to Class 2 dwellings as of July last year. So you need to be registered with the New South Wales government to do, at the moment, it applies to downpipes or stormwater within a building, and it applies to fire services, so hydrants, hose reels, sprinklers. Some consultants, which I don't know if Paul's in the room because I know he contacted me. I know Paul's online, sorry, are being asked to sign off on all services. So I actually contacted the government and said, hey, what's going on here? The regs only apply to stormwater and fire. Even though our drawings might show all services, they're the only ones we're regulated to sign off on. And the building commissioner's offsider told me, well, if someone wants you to sign off on everything, they can ask for it. They're entitled to, so they can go beyond the scope of the regs. So that's just a warning to everyone here. If you don't want to sign off on everything, update your fee proposal and say that you're only signing off under the Design and Building Practitioners Act for the services that you're required to legally sign off on, or be aware that you may be asked to sign off on everything. And if they do ask you, if you've excluded it, you can obviously charge a variation for that. And I also am aware that some people are producing a separate set of drawings to show downpipes and fire services with the government's little, I don't know if anyone here hasn't done it yet, but there's a little stamp you get from the government that you have to put in your drawings to have your registration number, what you're signing off on. So a lot of people are producing water services, gas services on one set of drawings, and then they'll have and sewer, sorry, and then a separate set of drawings that shows stormwater and fire services. So it's an evolving space, but that is likely to soon expand to Class 3 and 9C, which is hotels and aged care. And I believe the regulations will still be the same, that it's still stormwater and fire services. So just watch that space as it evolves. If you need help with registration, you're welcome to call me on my mobile, which I think is on the website. Send me an email and I can let you know. It was relatively easy to get that, as in time frame wise. It took a couple of months versus probably a year to get the accreditation under fair trading for signing off on hydrant services, which anyone who's done it will know what I'm talking about. It's painful because there's the two different regulations. So what else do we have on here? Also, Sean Wallace, is Sean here? Sean was coming down. He might have got trapped. Oh, there you go. Sean's down the back. Sean's about to start. So the government have various panels. Tom Wise sits on one at the moment for waterproofing. He's been on that for a year and a half. I've been sitting on one for the Design and Building Practitioners Act, which, probably they have about 40 people from around New South Wales to give you insight into what happens, and the meetings might go for 3 or 4 hours talking about proposed changes. And then Sean's going to sit on one for a new guideline they want to work on, which will outline the minimum requirements for design, certification, a bunch of different things. But Sean will probably give us an update on that once we know more about what's happening there. And then the last thing was we're in discussions with AHCAA WA and the Institute of Plumbing to form a memorandum of understanding, just to work in more closely with those organisations and just share ideas and share what we're doing. So we have put in the resources section of the website, is that right? And all the guidance notes, and they're in the resources section at the moment. Yeah, and then we're going to put them on a tab on the website, so you can click a tab and find them all there. So at the moment you have to go to resources. So we have the design guide, which is 50 pages. So the aim of it is to set out, if you're pricing a job as 50% DNC, 70% DNC, what services should you be providing? Because one company might think 50% is, if we put a dollar value to that, that's a $5,000 job, and another company might call that a $10,000 job. So obviously, generally speaking, you're going to get a very different service for half the price. So what this design guide is meant to do is stipulate the minimum information provided on your drawings for that scope of works, that you could refer through to an architect, a project manager, and say, look, this is what we're providing for 50% design, 70% design, for full tender, for shop drawings, whatever it is. The aim of this guide, and I believe Dave Stablina actually started originally back in 2012, and we've had various cracks at it, but we think we've got it to a stage now where it's good enough for at least people to start downloading and providing feedback on. We've also worked on a bunch of ITPs and commissioning documents. So the aim of these is, instead of getting rubbish ITPs from some plumbers, I know some plumbers have good ones, but some have rubbish ones, we can direct them to our website to download ITPs to test the water service, the sewer service, the backflow prevention devices, whatever they're testing. It's a 2 or 3 page document, depending on the service, for the plumber to do their testing, send through to us. And then there's a checklist there. They put their plumbing license number. So again, we've put them up in draft format. There's 20, I think I just mentioned that, but 25 different versions to try and cover most services. And all we're looking for there, again, is feedback on those documents so that we can keep improving them. But we're trying to lift the standard out there in the industry, because there's some rubbish out there at the moment. And the other one that's in there is an operation and maintenance manual, which I think is about 40 pages long, but that should also help plumbers to produce a more professional operation and maintenance manual than what some of them have been doing. So next, another space we've moved into, we've got some advisory notes, which we did hope to get out this week. We're just working on some images for those. So the cover sheet you can see there, but for one of them, so we've got clear outs, inspection opening and access panels. So the basis of that is Fair Trading have started to interpret that every inspection panel now needs every inspection opening now needs an access panel provided, which some plumbers, I believe, one job I heard of, were up for potentially $200,000 in access panels for just the one block of units. And that's since all of these new regs have come out. So Fair Trading are being a lot more scrupulous than they have been in the past. So the interpretation previously on that was that gyprock is accessible. Fair Trading do not deem gyprock accessible, and they're asking for access panels. So we've tried to provide some guidance to our members on what that may look like, but just be aware that if you're doing blocks of units, there are a few issues out there that people are still installing them the same way they have been the last 20 years, but they're now an issue where they previously weren't. So if you want more info on that, you can contact me and I'll give you a bit more insight, but hopefully this guidance note will help you understand how to get around that. So we've also done one on mechanical split system condensate, which gives advice on where to discharge condensate. A lot of councils will say you can't go to stormwater, you can't go to sewer. Again, it's a guidance note, not a standard. So hopefully you can use this guidance note to go back to council and tell them these are methods provided by the Hydraulics Association on how we can safely discharge condensate, and it's up to that authority to choose whether they accept that or not. But we're trying to iron out some of these grey areas that have caused people grief for 10 or 20 years. So then the next one is certification of siphonic drainage systems. So it's a bit more of a warning not to sign off on a siphonic drainage system unless you've actually designed it yourself, because you can get yourself into trouble. Untrapped wastewater systems, it's a bit more of a guidance. So this was actually pushed forward by Tom, where some people are putting in condensate stacks that pick up condensate from floor to floor untrapped, but provide a means for smoke from a basement or one floor to transfer from one floor to another. And it is something that you could end up paying a lot of money to fix if you've designed it and haven't provided those water seals from floor to floor to prevent smoke spreading from one smoke compartment to another. So again, it's just trying to help people understand, if you're going to do these alternate condensate drainage systems, how to go about that. We are also working on one for balconies. There's some discussions out there around balconies. I won't open up a can of worms there because I don't want it to spread, but we are trying to work on a guidance note on balcony drainage, again, tied in with some of the new interpretations. Fire test water. One of our members contacted us mentioning that the EPA are saying you can't discharge fire test water to stormwater. So exactly where that does and doesn't apply, I'm not sure where EPA can come onto a job and defects. So we're still investigating that further to provide a guidance note there as well. Whether you have to put some sort of filtration in the test pit because they're claiming that the fire water is contaminated. So we'll keep you posted on that. But if anyone does have any insight into that issue from previous experience, let me know so that we can try and let all the members know how to get around this. And I think I've mentioned before, but normally if this pops up on one job, it suddenly pops up on two more. And then before you know it, everybody's getting hassled about it. So we want to knock it on the head before it spreads. And then another one, which I haven't even read email properly, but on reflux valves in basements. So I can't even give you insight into that yet, but what I'm trying to sort of touch on here is if you are aware of a gray area in this industry that we have talked about at meetings here on tables or wherever else, and as an association, we can work together, put all of our combined knowledge together and try and close these issues out, contact us. And it might take 3 or 4 months to do, but we'll work on one of these guidance notes. And then the aim is to list them all on the website, direct to PCA, direct to council, whoever it is, to that part of our website and say, here's a guidance note on the HCAA website, download it, and hopefully we can help some of these issues to go away. So I know the Fire Brigade have been doing this for years, and they've got a bunch of guidance notes, and yeah, that's essentially what we're trying to do there. Yep. You want to talk about the balconies? You want to open that up? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So Tom can come up. So while Tom's coming up, what I've heard so far is AS 3500.3 says all downpipes must be 90 millimeters, and one particular project, they've interpreted a balcony outlet as a downpipe. So your 50 millimeter SBS or whatever outlet you use is non-compliant, is what's being thrown out there, which obviously we've been doing for decades. And yeah, Tom, you can.
Yeah. So I've sort of been sitting on a working group for the last year and a half talking about balconies in Class 2 buildings. It's been a fun topic. We've kind of been on a journey with the building commissioner as well, all the way to actually looking at total reform of what we're doing at the moment. So the problem is pretty systemic. Like 80% of Class 2 buildings suffer water ingress. And the root cause analysis to date has sort of shown that our DTS provisions in the BCA, not criticising the Australian Building Codes Board at all, don't meet the actual need for the buildings. There's a lack of coordination and understanding between hydraulic structural engineers and waterproofing people. And then the next one, really the next root cause sort of sits to people not having the experience to actually satisfy problem 1 and problem 2 of sort of the RCA analysis. So that sort of has posed a bit of a problem. So we've sort of looked at it from a few different perspectives. We've looked to assist the ABCB through our working group informally with writing some new performance requirements, which sort of better the performance understanding of a balcony. We've looked to put together a technical standard, which the HCAA potentially will adopt through a bit of coordination and agreement with the committee that we sat on, because the committee at the moment looks probably to produce we're calling it what good looks like. So it's not going to tell you exactly how to design it, but it will tell you what good looks like and not to trip up on the power cord on the way out type thing. That sort of approach. Some of the interesting things that we found in the literature reviews and also the research is that a good portion of other countries in the world actually design horizontal suspended drainage systems to only run 2/3 full. I personally have designed quite differently in my career in relation to that. The other interesting one is that a lot of the failures that we see is because of the lack of coordination between membrane interface points and drainage interface points, and people forgetting to actually drain the subsurface, so underneath the tiles, the mortar bed, because the membrane is not a perfect barrier. It's just a piece of stuff either painted on or torched on. So as an industry, and that seems to have led to the systemic failures. So we're getting back to sort of things that the Romans did, which was to provide falls to outlets and concrete falls and the like. So at the moment, the working group has sort of supported in putting a proposal to the Australian Building Codes Board that all structural slabs will fall to required outlets at 1.25% or 1 in 80, which is quite a change. We're also trying to push that we need to think about building heights, and that the plumbing system or the drainage system associated with balconies should be a key driver for the height of a building. We've been working with developers who obviously try and kick back, but the argument has been that maybe council needs to start thinking about the functionality of buildings and longevity of buildings rather than just height lines, and the difference between approving a building that won't necessarily work and a building that should work should be taken on its merit. So there's sort of work through touch on, because it's going to kick me to say shut up in a minute, is the group globally sort of has formed a bit of a you find it something that's gone wrong, we'll come and have a look at it. And some of the interesting things that we've actually found that have gone badly wrong really have been in relation to trench drains, and nothing against suppliers of trench drains, but once again, they've encouraged bad practice with subsurface or sub-finish drainage of the membranes. And so we've walked into buildings where trenches have been installed, they've sealed around the outlets, and the tiles squish, you know, when you walk there, because they're just full and laden of water. The other interesting thing is that the amount of structural movement within the first 6 years of a building is pretty chaotic compared to a membrane. I sat in a workshop where we talked through, or the structural engineer, after one of those it's leaking situations, talked through the movement over 10 years. And the membrane that was specified and applied was 0.2 or something like that. And the sort of that face that a builder gets, you know, when something's gone wrong, and they look out there and they're like, holy mackerel, I have a lot of stuff to go and fix. That whoops situation really hit home. So what this group and the commission is trying to do is integrate us as designers and engineers into the structural space, so we can understand that, and the structural engineers can understand us a bit better. And as a group, the waterproofing stuff is applied a lot better to sort of suit all aspects of the design, with the architects sort of taking the signatory at the end of the day. So it's quite an interesting journey. At the moment, the committee has been supported by the HCAA. with a letter to encourage the Australian Building Codes Board to sort of accept some of the work that New South Wales has been doing, and also sort of hurry that through to sort of start to fix a systemic problem that rings through not only the Class 2 building industry, which we're focusing on, but of course all classes of buildings out there. So if you have any ideas or support, the working group would love that, and feel free to contact me. I work for Warren Smith and Partners, or actually that's not even our name anymore, whatever the company name is. So email me at that, and I'd be happy to support the industry in bettering. So any questions? I sit over there, so come see me. I'd love to hear.
Thanks, Tom. So I already touched on these before, but that's the list of all the documents we've uploaded. So there's 27 on-site treatment systems for healthcare facilities, on-site liquid trade waste systems, surface and subsurface drainage system commissioning test sheet, stormwater downpipes, stormwater drainage. Yeah, so if anyone actually starts using them, because I can talk about them, but maybe no one will use them. But if you do, and you see room for improvement, don't hesitate to email those requests through, and we'll plan to keep updating them. So yeah, the fortnightly CPD sessions, just a reminder to email M. Because we haven't been here for 2 years, the New South Wales government did up the requirement from 15 points a year to 25. So we now need to maintain our registration with the government, we now need 25 points a year. The general gist, which a lot of people have already heard, is 1 point per hour of content. So if it's coming tonight, you'll get 2 points. For attending a CPD session, you'll get 1 point. So the CPD sessions benefit both the affiliates and the engineers, because yeah, we need those points to maintain our registration. So you also need to, it's not M's job to log your points. You log into the portal on the website, you upload whatever it is you've done, your subscription to Plumbing Connection, because that's 4 magazines a year, so 4 points a year. Whatever way it is you want to get your points, it's your responsibility to jump on the website, lodge proof of whatever training you've done, and then those points will then accumulate, and you can then download a CPD certificate off the website, provided you're compliant. So when you renew your registration with the New South Wales government, you can send that certificate through to prove that you're compliant. So yeah, and if you have any issues, again, call us and we'll show you. So these guys probably didn't know, but I don't know if Dave's here. Dave's spent a long time at Rehau, and as happens with some businesses, there are some changes, I believe, with all the COVID rubbish and everything else, but Dave's now over at Caroma. Do I officially call it Caroma or GWA? Either or, okay. So I know a lot of people here know Dave, and then obviously Chris was at Kembla and is now at iPlex. Oh, sorry, Vinidex. I got that wrong. Okay, so I've done a plug for iPlex, but it's actually Vinidex. So I apologize. So anyway, iPlex get a plug. Yeah, but I'm sure everyone knows Chris. So yeah, just block that logo out of your mind. Yeah, you can see I put this together at about 10 a.m. this morning, so, and then had my 4-hour drive down. So yeah, for those who don't know, I live in Port Macquarie now, so that's around about 4 hours north. So I've been driving for a while this afternoon. And then Fox Environmental, who've been a member of ours for 15, 20 years, based up in Queensland, where they mainly produce but renew solutions. So we've got Simon. Do you want to stand up, Simon? Yep. So Simon's here. Fox Environmental obviously do some specialist trade waste equipment. So we've had them talk before on airports, truck washers, all that kind of equipment. But if you want someone local to talk to rather than Fox up in Queensland, then Simon's your man. He's their representative down here in New South Wales. So you started with them about 18 months ago? Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to talk to Simon, he's just sitting over here. So, okay. So the diploma, it has officially started. We've mentioned this online, but if you haven't been on 20 online meetings, we've been waiting. Where are you, Rod? We've been waiting 6 years for this moment. Yeah. We've got 160 students enrolled online. Waiting. Yeah, waiting. So that's right. They're not all doing the course. They're waiting. we've got, we've put a call out, Rod's just put a call out for more people to put their hand up to teach. So Rod would talk you through how to get accredited to be able to teach. But we definitely need more people to put their hand up to teach. Is that online, Rod, or is it combination of face-to-face and online, or? Oh, the actual teaching though. The teaching is all online, or? Yep. 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 Yeah. Okay. And I believe we have Ty here. So Ty, do you want to stand up? Because Ty's he didn't get to, because I think it was all on COVID. But Ty was our first cadet, because we've got 3 cadets. So I don't know if there's any others here tonight. Yeah, anyone that's a student, you're welcome to stand up. Yeah, so I think you got 30 in the first batch, Rod, out of that 160-ish. Yep. Okay, so we had a few dropouts. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Teachers so far, you got. Is there 3? There's 3 of you that.
Maybe in there. I haven't seen it. Okay.
And the last thing, Rod, was course content. You still had a couple of subjects. You've got people writing that now, or do you still need? Yeah. I think he's just turning the volume up over here for you. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, is the course material? I know you said there were still a couple of subjects left. Yeah. So it's just whether you need volunteers to finish off those last few subjects, or if we're all good now.
Yes.
Yep. And what subjects?
vast majority of the time, our only units cover, I think we've got our sixth row.
Mhm.
We have a couple of individuals finishing off things like gas, fire sprinklers, and installation of fire services. If anyone feels very competent in hydrant side drills, that is outstanding.
Yeah.
And
And what's the pay rate again, just so people know, because it is at a reduced rate, but you do get.
$8 an hour in Tel's take.
Yeah.
There's a designated sort of quantity of hours, if you like. I think that was about 40 to 45 hours or so to write up assessments and parking lights.
Yep.
I can more than happily help you out with a lot. I got to give kudos to Paul Smith, who I think is online. He is now 5 units.
Mhm.
I'm about the same, and we've had probably about another 3 or 4 that have had to that. So
Okay.
Paul's done an enormous job in terms of getting this done. And look, we're really close. We've got Glenn Streetfield is running the gas unit in his fast forward gas. He's almost done. Look, if anyone's remotely interested, please.
And that includes affiliates. If you're proficient in a particular area, there's elements of all of those subjects that I know there's plenty of you here that have the knowledge to contribute. So get in touch with Rod. Okay, thanks, Rod. Okay, so finances, just a quick update. The bank balance is sitting at around 173,000, which is looking quite good, which is a big factor is obviously COVID. We haven't had to hold the face-to-face meetings, but that does put us into a good position coming up to the new financial year. We have recently paid, so that was August, $33,000 to Deakin Uni, who are shortly doing a presentation. So we're paying for half of their, the grad that was volunteering originally to monitor our water meters in the apartments. We're now paying him to continue that research with some new water meters that we purchased, which I'll get to in a second. So we've got 2 more years of $33,000 a year of helping to subsidize his masters. I think it's what it's officially called. We also had the Master Plumbers New South Wales. If anyone knows anyone there, big thanks to them. They've chipped in $5,000 towards the new water meters that we've purchased. And we have also, the HCAA have committed $10,000 towards the TAFE New South Wales fund. So we do still have around $35,000 of that money in the bank account there is specifically for education. So that bank balance, you got to reduce that down because that money is set aside for Rod and his team to produce course material and whatever else we need to bring through that next generation. So AQUIP, big thanks to Brent. I don't think he's here tonight, but he's been instrumental in helping us get these meters. That's a picture of one, I think at Milson's Point. They're like a clamp-on meter with a box on the side there that then sends via SMS a signal back to the server, which you can access off our water demand website. So the new meters we've purchased, we haven't actually installed it like this because we're still, I've started my own business. I've moved 4 hours north and my mind's gone a bit crazy, but what we've done installed, we've got these fancy new meters that can receive pulses in milliseconds rather than seconds. So it means that the old meters we got were, I think, about 3,500 each, but these ones are about 8,000. So they're world-leading water meters as far as the data they collect. And what James is going to touch on shortly is the differences between, we put this new water meter, one of them next to the existing meter that we have, which is the 5-second data versus the millisecond data. And James is going to touch on some of the differences we've seen where the percentage difference between that more accurate meter, because what we want to do is feed this information back to Standards Australia and get the standard updated. I've told everyone here 50 times, but the apartments we've monitored so far, the flow rates are averaging in that sort of 30 to 40% range of what we actually see from the Australian standards for a unit of 100 apartments. So what we'd like to do, and this is probably a 10-year dream, is roll these meters out into hospitals, into aged care, into lots of different building categories, but that takes a lot of resources, a lot of volunteer work, a lot of money, a mixture of everything to make it happen. But this part here is we want to now compare hot water usage to cold water, because we all size the hot to match the cold, because that's all we've got the data for in the standards worldwide. And this is really world-leading data as far as seeing accurately what is the difference in the peaks in the hot to the peaks in the cold, and the peak hour, the peak second, all of that information. And that's what James and Brendan are doing at Deakin Uni. So this one here, I don't know if Dave wants to jump up for a bit, but myself, I've been on the committee for 10 years. I've been serving in the role of president for about 6 years, and I am finding it quite hard. I'm now running my own business a bit over a year now, but yeah, I've spent, without boring everyone, but 2 days last week on the gas standard, I think a day before that on ABCB meeting, a day the week before that on a New South Wales government meeting, and then the role here at HCAA, it is a volunteer role, so we don't get paid anything. So even driving down from Port Macquarie, but I took that on and I enjoy it, and I've done it. I've learned a lot from this role, and I've really appreciated it. So to everyone here, thank you for supporting me. Thank you for the support of the association. I'm not stepping down from being part of the association, but I am stepping down as president. And when we merged into becoming a national body instead of state-based, we then moved to slightly different structure now. So under that structure, every 3 years, we are aiming to rotate the roles of directors, the role of the president. We don't have to do that, but the idea is, like with a business that runs quite successfully. I used to work with Dave at Wood and Grieve, and they had a rule that you couldn't sit on the board for, what was it, if you're over 55 years of age or something, because they want to keep the board young. But there's all different theories out there. But the 3 year thing was is to try and bring new ideas in, to bring new enthusiasm, and hopefully I brought a lot of enthusiasm over my 10 years. But yeah, I've got 2 kids, I've got a family to raise, and yeah, I guess I'm just having to say I need to step back for a bit, but I'll let Dave jump up and say a few things.
So just to support what Nick said, Nick called me a couple of weeks ago and said, you know, last year I mentioned at one of the online meetings that I was wanting to retire from this position. He said, I don't think anyone took me seriously. And I said, no, I didn't either, mate. But yeah, but I want to talk to you about something. I said, good, because I want to talk to you about something as well, because I want to step down from position of director on HCAA as well. So there's positions opening, and more importantly, the position of president of this association. And a lot more will be said about Nick and the years he spent with us. But this whole current committee went through some turmoil. You might remember 3 years ago, which resulted in us becoming HCAA. So it's been one hell of a journey, and I'm really pleased and proud to say that we've actually transpired, and we've reached probably the level and above of where HCAA New South Wales was 3 years ago. I understand Western Australia are now reaching out to us to try and work on some sort of reciprocal sharing of knowledge arrangement, which is great. So the forces of evil down south seem to be dropping off. So that's great. So this is really an open invitation to our members to really consider and take an opportunity to represent the industry. I know I was talking to Gary Chan earlier, tongue in cheek, probably, no doubt, but he said, you know, I want to be on the committee. I said, well, fucking do it, you know, don't talk about it. Now's the opportunity to do it. So we're going to be sending out formal emails and invitations. If you're thinking about doing it, there'll be a transition period for this president role. Usually we like people to be on the committee for a number of years before they step up to the role, because it's a position that we all need to respect as a body of people. So you can't have any knucklehead up here. You guys have to, and girls have to, respect this position and what it stands for. So we've all respected what Nick's done in those previous years. So if you're having a good hard think about it, send some information through to Emily, and we'll have a chat to you. Thanks a lot.
So I'm going over time, but I'll try and fly through these last few slides. So just to touch on for everyone, this is our current committee. Affiliates listening who are interested, we introduced the role of affiliate committee member 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, actually, 2 years ago. And we've had Kate, and she's done an absolutely brilliant job. She's helped to give us insights into how we can better serve the affiliates in the room. So we're not just focused on the consultants, we're also looking at how we can serve your needs better. That role is coming up for replacement again on that 3-year cycle. So if you want to put up your hand, just send your name in when you get that email. We are asking for a 3-year commitment, but it might only be a year. So just we'd like any roles that come up, we're trying to stick with that 3 years because I think that gives continuity for that 3-year period. So we don't get too much changing. Sean Wallace joined us. Sean's down the back. He put his hand up before, but he joined us on the committee middle of last year, as did Paul McDonald, who's faceless up there. Yeah, these are the people that have supported Dave and myself over the last 3 years in a really big way. We've got Carl Somerville down in Canberra. I need to sort of get back on him now that COVID's disappeared for a while, hopefully forever, but we'll see what happens. But to lock in another date for Canberra. So the aim down in Canberra is 2 to 3 meetings a year, the same in Tassie. But if anyone knows Carl, say hi to him and we'll hopefully get some dates out for some Canberra meetings. So Ryan, as I mentioned before, down in Tassie, he's already taken the reins down there. We've got a meeting booked for the end of this month, and then maybe another one in July and then November. But we'll again confirm that as we go. And then we've got Paul and Derek over in South Australia. So when we merged with South Australia, these guys have been on the board over there for 20 years. Both of them have served as president over there at different times. But if you do end up going to Adelaide for a meeting, that's who you'll be catching up with. So Derek is one of our directors, current directors. So I put up here at the moment, Dave's made it clear he's going to step down as director. So I put a strike through his name there. And we'll see who puts up their names. But under the rules, there's positions for up to 12 directors. So the more we have, the more load we can potentially spread. As Dave said, we would like it that whoever puts their hand up has spent at least a year on the committee previously, so that you at least understand how it worked. Because I did sit there for the first 2 years wondering, what have I signed myself up for and what am I doing here? But yeah, once you get into the swing of things, you learn a lot, and it is very valuable. So yeah, but we need a minimum of 3. And then basically, if we had 6 directors every 3 years, 3 of those directors would stand down and 3 new ones would come in, is the way it's meant to work. So we're keeping that board fresh and coming with new ideas. So new standards out, 2419/2021, which Mark's going to talk about. I'm sure he'll touch on, but it's looking extremely likely, I wouldn't say guaranteed, but almost guaranteed to be adopted in the BCA in September this year, which was meant to come out in March and was delayed by 6 months due to COVID, like everything else. And AS 5601, that's the committee I've been sitting on. It does look very likely that we will get AS 5601 2022 out later this year. So I'll confirm with you when that is officially confirmed. I did do a presentation last year online, which you can probably access in the resources section or email me, but I covered the 14 sort of key changes in that standard that will affect you. So a big one, which is still being contested even as of last week, is the gas safety shutoff devices for PECs, using PECs on a gas service. So what that was, for those who didn't dial into that meeting, yeah, if you use PECs in a block of units, you're going to have a gas safety shutoff device, so that if there's a fire, the fire detection system will trip that gas safety shutoff valve and shut off the gas. So what it really essentially means is if you use PECs instead of copper on a gas service, you're going to need to be aware. I can't tell you exactly what those changes are because they're not fully agreed on, but it's likely that it's going to push up the cost of installing PECs on a project, because you're going to have to buy those safety shutoff devices. So there's an UPSO, which is under pressure shutoff, that you'll need to put on a house if you exceed a certain quantity of gas. And on other projects, it'll be the full-on system 3, the push button number. So I think they're $3,500 on average, and if they trip, you have to reset them. And yeah, Rod.
Just
Yep. No. Dave might. Yeah, Kate's not here tonight. So Kate Jennings is the one sitting on that standard. So we'll have to ask her because it was due to come out in draft format late last year, and I think it's now looking like the middle of this year. So I don't know if it'll be adopted by the authorities, as in Sydney Water and Hunter Water and everyone else, or yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah. Yep.
Preliminary basis, and it's been worked on by all authorities in Australia and a few the industry, as mentioned. It will be adopted. It's going to take some time for that to go through. So we had hoped it was going to be last year, but it's still preliminary stages, also in draft. It's in total draft and being edited and corrected by everybody this stage of authorities. So it's still coming to cover trade-based and certainly grease traps in general. Who knows how long it's going to take. Sydney Water is going to be bringing out some fact sheet shortly, which will guide you on grease, waste, anything from all the grease traps. That's coming. I can't tell you when. That's
Right. Thank you. Okay. We have. I did actually have 2 photos. I'll skip the music because normally I have lots of photos. But I only managed to get 1 photo up. So I don't know. Is Pete here tonight? Oh, he is. Yeah, so Pete sent me this one. So from memory, we have a stable installed. Was it upside down? And what were the other main grievances with that one? Oh, open vented with a normal tap. So it's just an epic fail on multiple fronts. But yeah, can we arrange a bottle of wine for Pete as well? Because I normally have that arranged as well. So I apologize for not having that ready already. But yeah, just a reminder, now that we are back to face-to-face meetings, if you see some dodgy stuff out on site, I did get one from Matt Lloyd as well, but I didn't get around putting it up. But if you do see dodgy pictures, flick them through to us and we'll put them up on the screen for us. Oh, 6 minutes. Oh, okay. Can you read the messages? Oh, it's all good. Okay, we're all covered. Okay. So we'll roll through to James now. Oh, I'm skipping all of that because we're behind schedule. So I need to close this. Okay, and then
right. Can you hear me?
yeah, we can see you up on the screen.
Yeah, can you hear me or not really?
We can't. How do we? The sound's not coming through here. I don't know how we make that work unless we twist the microphone down. It's probably going to sound real grainy. Try talking.
Let me see. Is it better?
I can hear that, can I?
No.
Okay. Maybe everyone can have a 5-minute break, or you got your food coming out anyway. So everyone's free to talk while we fix the sound up.
Yes. Well, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
no.
I can hear you, just everyone else can't.
Oh, okay.
So let me just how do I manage? Okay. Sound. Few options. Wait, I'm just gonna I just got to go into the Zoom settings. Few options.
You probably need to somehow output the sound to the the largest
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the.
In where it is.
Click unmute, start video. You should be going through that, the sound.
Maybe to change the setting.
No, no, can't hear you. Can you hear me? No, I can't hear you. No. No, can't hear you. No.
No, is it working? Can you hear me? No, I can't hear anything. Can you hear me?
So
James, we're going to try through my laptop.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you. Good.
You can hear me? Awesome. So I can hear you. We just need to get you on the speakers in here in the room, and then we'll be good.
Yes, hopefully.
And then I'm going to have to share my
Where is
screen.
your setting for?
To get it up there. What do you need to look for?
The setting for speaker? We are going to.
So I think you need to share my screen first, don't you? So if you go to share my screen, you'll get a share sound and optimize the video for it.
but does that maybe
but then
that
I
doesn't
don't-
work
that
because then
doesn't
you're
work.
stealing his thing. Maybe we can't even do it.
Oh, man. Maybe I just hold the microphone to. I'll just stand here like a pretty and like hold the
I
microphone.
feel like
Okay,
yeah.
you need to share yours again. I need to not do that.
Okay, we'll try
Hold
that.
on. That's not going to work, James. Hang on. Hey, James, speakers.
Hey, can you just someone phone him and just put it against the speaker or something?
Hold a microphone against the speaker.
Like, no, someone phone him on a mobile phone or something.
Do that one now, but I don't think it will work.
Let's see.
Turn that light up and see if you need to share your screen again. Yeah. Hold on. Nick's going to share his screen again, which has got your presentation in it.
Yeah.
Turn the microphone right up.
Of the microphone.
We bend that down to there. So if he speaks, it might work.
Everything instead of everything will go to the computer.
Okay, cool. All right. Hey James, say something for me, and we'll see how loud you sound.
Yes, can you hear me?
So we're hearing you just
Okay.
through the other one.
We need to change the setting on the computer.
Okay. How do I do that?
So I will go to mute. Use.
Audio settings.
No, you will see the speaker and the microphone. I just disconnect this one. This something.
Powers of technology.
Well, yeah, it happens.
Oh, for some reason, doesn't.
And here was me before saying, James, you'll be fine. Let's just wing it. Cursed that, didn't I? I cursed it.
You just close it and open again. Doesn't even show when you.
Can we just do that? I'll bend that down. Can we like put that to my speakers and see if you can just hear it that way? Or is that just silly? It's not ideal.
No. Well, if you have external mic speaker, I think in Zoom, you need to select which one to use.
Yeah, we're plugging into my laptop with this speaker system from the venue. It's just not doing anything.
Doesn't recognize. Okay.
It's looping out. I'll spin it that way. Looping like back through that.
Yeah, you might need to mute you there.
Yeah, I've got myself.
I'll try this one.
Got a team on it.
That's all right. I do have to go in a few minutes.
You.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry.
I have teaching at 8, which is something I cannot skip. But
Yeah.
Brandon is here today as well. So just the worst case scenario,
You just
I
follow.
have to hand over this to Brandon to present. I do want to do this time, to.
Well, hey, James, how about we arrange it as a CPD meeting on a Tuesday lunchtime? And we can do it online. We can get the members on board. And also you are speaking next week down at South Australia as well.
Yes,
So if
yes.
people want to log on to that, then we can give them the option of that as well. But it'd be quite nice to do it as a CPD session, and we can arrange a Tuesday lunchtime and just get like 20 minutes, half an hour of your time and do it that way.
Yes,
Try
yes.
one more thing with Nick's computer to
Yes.
see if anything works. Last ditch attempt.
Yes, either way is all kind of flexible.
Yeah, and then
so
you've got
this,
okay.
Yeah, this update is a minor update. It's not too much technical details, so it shouldn't take too long.
That's okay. Well, look, how about we scrap this evening, unfortunately, and then let's me and you chat offline, and we'll come up with a solution in a way.
Yes, yes. Let's start to another one, either through the essay or to another CPD online. Just plug in for the 10-15 minutes. I think that will do. Yeah.
All right. And you know what? I might get a few extra people online next week as well, which could work.
Yes.
Thanks, James. Apologies for that. And apologies.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
We'll chat to you soon.
No, yeah, okay. I'll chat to you next time. I have to go. All right. So no stress. Okay. All right. All right.
We're not going to bother. He's got a shit to do. He's presenting next week. Sorry, I should have tested. It's one of those things. Don't worry about it.
We've done plenty of them.
And I'll also do a CPD event as well.
Yep. Okay.
So if you can let people know that he will be online doing the same presentation next week.
Okay. Yep. All right. Cool. Yeah. It's all right. We should have tested before, but it's all good. Thank you. All right, everyone. We're just going to skip to Mark because we couldn't get the sound to work. So anyone that's interested in updates on the water demand, there's a CPD session that M sent out an invite for. No, oh, he's talking in Adelaide. Okay, he's talking in Adelaide next Tuesday night. So if you want to hear more about that, you'll have to dial in there because he had to go to a lecture. So when Mark comes back, we'll kick off into 2419-2021. He'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes, so you can keep talking till then.
Tough crowd. So, Nick, why don't I wait for 10 minutes while they eat their dinner? Why don't I wait for 10 minutes? Why don't I wait for 10 minutes till they have a feed? All right. Okay. First of all, thanks for the opportunity for letting me chat to you guys and girls. For those who don't know me, my name's Mark Porter. I work for Fire and Rescue New South Wales, and I'm supposedly here to talk about AS 2419 Part 1. The standard was published in 2021. Now, I've only got 30 minutes, so clearly I can't discuss all the things that are in the standard. So if you look up on the screen, you'll see this is a PDF. So this is a PDF I gave to the Association of Accredited Certifiers, and it basically tries to compare 2021 with 2005. So there's a bit of an introduction that I'll talk to. I'll speak to them some of that, and if we get time, the plan is just to toggle between the PDF, which is just a whole row of tables. It was just too difficult to do a PowerPoint, and then I'll try and pick up some clauses here. So I'm wary I've got 30 minutes, and if anyone wants to ask a question any time, then that's fine. All right. So I found the comments this evening from Nick and Tom pretty interesting, and I'm going to pick up on a theme that I think they both discussed. So I'm going to try and get a bit of audience participation and see what sort of crowd I've got here. All right. So I'd like you to raise your hand and keep it up if you drove to Curability today. So if you drove to Curability, all I'm asking you is to keep your hand up. All right. Now, as you drove to Curability, I want you to keep your hand up if you stopped at every red light. All right. I'm starting to work out what the crowd's like. All right. I want you to keep your hand up if you drove at probably a slower speed than you normally did. All right. I want you to keep your hand up if there was a puddle on the side of the road and you sort of moved to the side so you wouldn't be driving through a deep puddle. All right. Okay. I've got a rough idea of the crowd that's in front of me. Well, yes, but what, you can put them down now, okay? Now, that simple task was about one thing. What I've learned from that simple thing was that on the way to this presentation, you risk assessed. You assessed risk for the time you left home to the time you got here. Your travel speed, where you stopped, you assessed risk. It's what Nick spoke about and it's what Tom spoke about. It was about managing risk, okay? Now, what's really interesting and what I'm going to talk about is risk and AS2419. Now, at the end of this presentation, just as an experiment, I'd like you to close your eyes and try and walk out of here. And I'll guarantee within about 5 or 6 spaces, you'll open your eyes. And the reason is you want to assess risk. The simple act of walking is a risk assessment. So what I'm trying to say, essentially, pretty much managing life is about managing risk. Now, what I'm going to talk to in the first part of this document is about risk and how hydraulic consultants see it and how they, for whatever reason, their whole world is about managing risk, financial, drive down the road, walk. However, when they get to AS2419, sometimes all these filters just disappear. They just disappear. And I'll give you the example. There is a very large isolated building out in Western Sydney. It is 30 metres tall. I see it fairly regularly. The hydrant booster assembly is placed 10 metres from the building. And this is a massive site. Now, the hydraulic consultant can put his hand on his or her heart and say, it complies with the standard. Yes, 10 metres from the building, sprinkler protected, happy days. But what he or she is also saying is to the fire brigades, when that building's on fire, we want you to hook your big red truck up to that building, which is basically towering over them. It's a 30-metre tin wall, sprinkler protected, and saying, we want you to put your truck there for the duration of the incident. Now, clearly, a more appropriate decision, a risk-based decision, would have been put it over near the drive, remote from risk. All right. So what's happened in AS2419, which most people probably won't be aware of, but I'm going to try and drag them into the fact, is in the back of the book, in informative appendices, it talks about risk. It talks continually about risk. Now, my frustration basically with the fire industry and the ABCB, and I continually say, is this. If we had more fires, there'd be a lot of more questions asked about For whatever reason, poor design has been able to be accepted. But what I'm going to say to you is, as time changes, what you should be doing when you're looking at AS 2419 and the rules in the standard is say, is this the best spot for this hydrant system based on the risks in the building? Now, I understand, well, I don't understand because I'm a public servant and have been all my life, essentially. I don't understand commercial pressures, but I've got a feel for it, all right, because I've spent my time in that space. So when you look and you make a decision and go, yep, we'll just put it there, happy days, I'd like to think that you think, if this all went to pack, this was really just one of them jobs that ended up in the coroner's court. Can I validate my decisions based on risk as opposed to the application of the deemed to satisfy provisions of AS 2419? In the appendices in the back of the book, there is clear statements now saying, in regards to booster assemblies, the location requirements detailed in the front of the book may not necessarily be appropriate in all instances. Like, I was kind of going, what I want the hydraulics industry and the people who are designing systems for my peers who potentially are your sons and daughters and things like that, to consider risk and not just say, happy days, in the case of this building that's 30 metres tall, if we put it near the building, we save a heap on pipe. If we have to put it over near the drive, we've got to run 50 metres there and back and all sorts of problems. That's cost. And I understand the developer's going to go, well, why put it over there? But what I'm saying is, from in the risk world, in the fireys world, if I was around when that building with the 30-metre wall was alight, for whatever reason, it all went to pack and the wall fell down and, you know, took out a couple of hoses and half a fire engine and stuff like that. And if I was asking the coroner's court how I'd speak, I would say the hydraulic consultant failed in their obligation to design with safety. All right, so I'm going to give you a heads up. If you read the back of the book, it will speak a lot about risk and the appropriate, you know, so I guess what I'm saying to you, to manage risk, like Tom spoke about the balconies and Nick spoke about commercial issues. What I'm saying to you, as you make decisions, you should be able to say to yourself, okay, if this goes to pack, I'm fairly confident I can defend my decision in a court of law based on my understanding of the risks. Now, if you get to read this document, and for whatever reason, I've said to Nick, you'll all get a copy, so it'll help you understand the changes in the standard. You'll see these 3 pictures of animals. Now, why'd they stick them in there? If I stuck a great white in the middle of this room, most people would stand maybe 10 foot away from it, because they'd be fairly confident that it's snapping jaws and it's rolling over and gasping for air, we're pretty safe. If I put a tiger in this room, anyone who's got track shoes in their car or in their bag would be putting them on because they'd be thinking, all I've got to do is outrun the slowest person in this room because the tiger will get them, all right? And a snake is somewhere in between. But the concept is this. Whoops, what have I done, Nick? Scroll down. Okay. Not all risks are the same. They're not the same. And what I'm saying to you, when you look at buildings, you can't always just go, well, happy days, I'm going to build it 10 metres from the building. I want you to consider risk when you design. That's really the first message. And if you dig into the informative appendices, which I encourage you to do, because there's a lot of stuff in there that's kind of interesting, we hope, and help with design and clarify things. So the first part to take away is, I don't think you can just go happy days, it complies with the standard anymore. First of all, I should have said, these are the opinions of Mark Porter, not necessarily those of Fire and Rescue New South Wales or anyone who's got any legal experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But risk is an issue in today's world, not just commercial. And AS 2419 gives you options about compliance, but it's not saying they're all applicable in every circumstance. That's the first take home message. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can work this thing. Okay. Now, I'll have to read this. I'm sorry, and I apologize if people can't read this. Okay, I'm just going to read from this. Does the NCC and AS 2419 detail the minimum or maximum requirements? When I first commenced at fire safety many years ago, you can tell I'm an old guy, it was regularly pointed out to me by industry and regulators that the normative provisions of the National Construction Code represented the minimum requirements for construction. Now, many years later, and having observed industry for all these years, I believe the preceding statement is incorrect and that the NCC and its associated standards are interpreted by industry to represent the maximum requirements. To emphasise this point, the following comments are offered. One of the most common criticisms from fireys in the field is that they cannot read the information on the block plan. How could this be, as an A3 block plan has been provided? The answer lies here. Irrespective of the size of the building, the amount of information required to be detailed, the light availability and the position of block plan speaker, in the majority of cases, industry has determined then that an A3 size block plan is the maximum size. Now, I look around here, there's a lot of people with glasses on. There's a lot of fireys wearing glasses too. Now, it is unbelievable how much information industry can squash into an A3 bit of sheet press metal, whatever you do with your plastic, and fireys just go, well, we can't read it. So AS 2419 2021 is saying, yes, there's still a minimum size, but now you can, it's prompting you to say, make it a bit bigger so people can read it. And the interesting thing is one of the criticisms or one of the big feedbacks from industry is the fact that a lot of the people playing in the commissioning space are arguing for improved block plans. And if you look at clause 11.7 of AS 2419, you'll see there's a whole lot more information in it. And a lot of it came from industry saying, this is probably the most reliable bit of documentation that we'll have in the place because it'll be permanently there, et cetera, et cetera. So not just for fireys, it'd be nice if actually industry could read it and sort of go, yep, this is functioning. So that's my first point. Not all risks are the same as evidenced by the, is then a 10-metre separation distance appropriate in all instances? Well, I've discussed this with regard to the separation of the fire hydrant system from the nearest risk. Are each of the booster assembly locations detailed appropriate in all instances with regard to providing firefighters with a safe place to operate from when the building is involved? The answer to both the preceding questions, again, most definitely no. Now that figure sits in the back of the book. It's about booster assemblies. You know, it says not less than 1.5 times the height of building away from the building. It infers that that's what the fire service would like. And the reason we do that is when we respond to incidences, our first call at large isolated buildings and factories and anything that's low rise, type C, can potentially fall, is we want to be 1.5 times away from the building. We want everyone, as many people away from the building as possible, just in case something silly goes on. Now this picture's in the back of the book. And what I've been saying to AFAC is every time you get into a design meeting with a large isolated building, you turn to section P and you just point at that figure. And you say, we want this. This is what we want. We don't want 10 metres from a 30-metre wall. We want you to mitigate risk for us so that when we turn up, we can operate from somewhere that's reasonably safe. So concept of risk. All right. Sorry, I'll just read the last bit. While it's understood that commercial issues play a major role in determining the final design of building, it's hoped that when you consider any fire hydrant system design, the questions you ask yourself are not just about does the design conform with AS 2419, but rather how effectively does design treat the risks associated with the building or site and support safe and effective fire brigade intervention activities. Block plans larger than A3 everywhere. AS 2419 details a maximum scale to encourage block plans. Fire brigade booster assemblies located as remotely as possible from the building or site risk. Appendix P of AS 2419 hits the booster assembly locations may not be appropriate in all instances. To conclude, in regards to this risk space, it is hoped the provisions of AS are interpreted by the members of the Hydraulic Consultants Association to be what they are, the minimum requirements. They're not the maximum. And I understand, I totally get it. I've got some eyes on me going, well, Mark, you live in bubble world over up the front there, because in our world of dollars and cents, they are the maximum. But what I'm saying to you, to manage risk, and again, what's interesting is every time there's a building gets on fire, it ends up in coroner's court. The people involved in that space all of a sudden realise it's a different game. So my thoughts on risk is that bit there. All right, now we've got 15 minutes. So when you get to this document, I give some broad guidance on general sort of changes, and then there's the tables that follow as specific. So we'll probably get through this page and that'll do us. So where possible, all items have been grouped. For example, table 3.3 of AS 2419/2005, number of outlets required to discharge simultaneously for protect is now included in section 2. Didn't make any sense to the committee of FP 009 that you've got a hydraulic table talking about number of hydrants required to flow in section 3, which is about location. So one of the things the committee tried to do was group like with like. So hopefully we succeeded. And the other classic example is pretty much all the other signage requirements have been put in one spot in section 11. So if you go, oh, what signs do we need for this building? Let's go to section 11 and we'll find them. It's in ancillary items and stuff like that. AS 2419 now has 12 sections, where 2005 had 10. The new sections created a pipework design and installation and pipe supports. So all we did was split the basically existing section into 3 and expanded each of them. So there's a lot more prescription in those things. Where possible, a more consistent structure across section has been applied, for example, to line with clause 7.2 when a fire brigade booster assembly is required at section 7. That's in the 2005 standard. We've added new clauses in section 4 and section 6 when an on-site water storage tank is required, when a fixed on-site pump is required. What we've tried to do is structure up the document so over the longer term, people start to get a feeling of go, oh, that's the water bit and that's this, and there's some sort of consistent structure across sections. Obviously there's variation, but there's been an attempt to, yes.
2304 reference to the secondary reference.
Yep. So all that stuff got taken out, you know, that's in the 2005 one about tanks and effective capacity. That all went into 2304. So we've basically just made references to that. And in regards to tanks, so one of the key directives from the ABCB at the start of the document was to remove all subjective statements in AS 2419, 2005, where practicable, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So if you look in the 2021 standard, there's no subjective statements, because the ABCB's comment was, this should just be a recipe for a hydraulic consultant to pick up this book and build a hydrant system, DTS, without consulting the fire service. So in essence, it's a cookbook for you to build a hydrant system without consulting the fire service, no subjective things. And if you look at the 2005 standard, it sort of says meet the operational needs of the fire brigades and stuff like that. If you think about the suite of standards in AS 2419, there's part 1, part 2, and part 3. So let's just talk about part 2 and part 3. So if you put a compliant booster connection in part 3 and you put compliant hydrant valves in and you provided all the clearances that are deemed by AS 2419/2001, in theory, you've met the operational needs of the fire brigades, because AFAC has agreed to those clearances in part 1, they agreed to the valves in part 2, and they agreed to the booster connections in part 3. Now, one of the things that's you probably should all be aware about is that the fire brigades are getting a bit smarter, becoming a bit more wise. So if you're designing booster assemblies that don't have booster connections that say AS2419 Part 3 on them, there's a fair point that down the track, someone's going to say that's a non-compliant booster assembly because it doesn't have AS2419 Part 3 stamped on the booster connection. Now, again, managing risk, a poor decision would be not to install a booster connection that complied with AS2419 Part 3 because, in a sense, you're now taking on the risk yourself. So it's very clear now. It's all do this, do this, do that. You build a compliance system. Okay. The standard is now generally more prescriptive to remove ambiguity of AS2419. That sort of addresses the comment of where practical, et cetera, et cetera. So where possible, each normative clause, brackets point, is itemised and associated with a clause number, not unlike the NCC. The change made has been done to support compliance inspections, activities and readability. So if I clicked over here, and I'm not sure if anyone's really familiar with 2005, but clause 7.4 is an endless series of paragraphs you can't make reference to, you know what I mean? So if you end up in this document, you will find, I can go a bit further. Okay, it is written, oops, sorry. But if you look there, it's got A123. So the standard's essentially been written like the NCC wherever we could. So if you want to make a non-compliance statement about an internal hydrant, you can say the non-compliance was A, clause 224A2. So the whole document is tried to be written in that way so that when you design or when you go and inspect and you want to make a comment about compliance, again, I'll reference the clause 7.4 in 2005, which is about, it's a page long. It's got points 1, 2, and 3, and then there's about 10 paragraphs after it with multiple points in each of the paragraphs. So if you wanted to say in 2005, your booster assembly didn't comply with clause 7.4, you'd have to say paragraph 6, second sentence, blah, 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 this. So it's much more structured and formatting so that in compliance terms, you can make reference to points a bit easier. The underlying general theme of the standard is sprinkler protected buildings good, non-sprinkler protected buildings bad. That was basically the rationale for one of the key drivers in the standard. And it was interesting that the ABCB took part of it and threw it into their NCC 2019, but they forgot to take the bit about external hydrants. So if you're complying under the current hierarchy, you could reference clause 7.3 and say, I've got a sprinkler building, I don't have to protect the booster, but you'd have to then reference 2005 and say, well, my external hydrants around the building, you've got to have a wall that's 3 by 2 by 2. So you'd have to develop a performance solution to say, we want to not provide the walls there. So the concept was, why do we ask for a 3 by 2 by 2 wall in a non-sprinkled and sprinkled building? Surely, if we get a sprinkler controlled fire, why do we need a 3 by 2 by 2 wall? So, and there was discussions about what's the point of a 3 by 2 by 2 wall if the building's 20 meters tall, 20 stories tall. So it has a 1 in 5 chance of, a 1 in 20 chance of protecting fireys on the ground level. In all other cases, something can fall from the building and hurt it. So it was like, this is illogical. So sprinkle buildings good, non-sprinkle bad. No requirements for FRLs. So, and that theme is throughout the book. Endeavours have been made to improve the redundancy features of hydrant systems in buildings having an effective height of more than 50 metres. So, probably got 5 minutes, so I'll cover this point. So when I got on the standard, I basically knew nothing. I'm quite open. I'm just a buffy fiery, you know, what is a standard? Like, that's the level of my wisdom, you know, what have I got myself into? And as I went along, I sort of bloke who just says, why is that? So as I gained a bit of wisdom, at one point in the committee, I asked the committee, I said, do I understand this correctly? Well, I'm building over 25 metres. We've got to put a 25,000 litre tank. And because there's a tank, we've got to put 2 pumps, and those pumps have got to be 5 litres a second. I went, yes, that's correct. I said, so why do we ask for 2 pumps for this tank? And they said, well, that's redundancy. If one fails, then the other one's. So, okay, well, explain to me the other side of the equation. Explain to me the relay pump side of the equation. Now, we're putting a relay pump in, which is supposed to be full duty and is supposed to run for 4 hours. We're happy with 1. I can still remember the moment there was people in the committee going, are you saying the fire service want 4 pumps? And I went, no, what I'm saying is what should be provided redundancy to is the fire pump that's responsible to provide full flow for 4 hours. So what eventually happened as we went down the track, if you end up in the 2017 and 2021 standard, you'll note that for high-rise buildings above 50 metres, you've got to put a tank on. The tank's a bit bigger now under 2017, sorry. And those pumps and that tank have got to run for 4 hours. That's it. And you provide a bypass. And I probably should go to the clause in the AS2419 about fire brigade boosting and commissioning. So in theory, and the rationale, the feedback from industry was, if you want the most reliable pumps, then they should pull from tanks. And that way they're easier to commission. We can get water back into them, we can turn them on, make sure they're running, et cetera, et cetera. Where probably everyone in this room knows of relay pumps that have sat in buildings and have never been turned on and have never had any water to them, because to get water to them, you've got to organise a big red truck, you've got to run lines of hose, you've got to get water in. Now, what the commissioners, the fire hydrant commissioners charge for that test, and if it's a relay pump, in theory, I assume it should be tested every month under 1851, so that the body corporate for getting a big red truck and laying 2 hoses into the booster connection and running it, highly unlikely. So there was some pragmatic decisions made about high rise, and it was about, we want 2 pumps. And the other argument was, if you know anything about buffy firemen or firefighters and big red trucks, our trucks are variable speed. They ramp up and down based on demand. So the argument from AFAC was, well, why can't we have this kind of performance in buildings over 50 metres? So you'll find in the 2021 standard, they asked for variable speed drives. Now, there's an advantage with that, which I didn't realise, but Bill Davis from Prime Pumps indicated to me there is an advantage in variable speeds above 2 of them pulling from a tank, is the fact that both of them are designed for 20 litres a second. So let's say buffy fires are up on the floor and they're opening hydrants. Previously, in days gone past, the relay pump, you just go past the curve and it just slowly disappear or whatever. Well, now with 2 variable speed pumps pulling from the tank, Bill tells me that if fire is open too many hydrants on the floor, the second variable speed pump will kick in. So we've now got potentially 40 litres a second. And God only knows why we need 40 litres in a sprinkle building, multi-level, but that design benefit has come in response to that decision. So in the high-rise space, there's been improvements in redundancy. And I'll just finish with the thing about scope, and then that's my 30. Okay, why aren't you moving? Okay, Nick. All right, whoops. How do I make it bigger again? Sorry? Hang on, you're talking to a 60-year-old, mate. Like, this is someone who doesn't even have a post.
There's a magnifying glass on the bottom of the page.
Ah, beautiful. All right. Xbox. Is that the magnifying device?
Yeah. Yeah, he's above the Xbox thing. That's it.
And then you're going to click on the page.
Yeah, then you click on the page.
Ah. Sorry, now I got to. Oh, I'll be here to midnight, bro. I'm a mouse guy. You give me a mouse, I'm confident. You give me a touchpad, I've got no idea.
I'm not much better with a touchpad. So.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, there we go. So I've already. Okay, we'll switch back to the hand. Where do you want to?
We'll just go to the top of this table and then that'll do it. So that's the scope, all right.
Is that zoomed in enough?
Yep. All right, so I'll talk to the scope and then that's basically me done. All right, if you look at the 2005 standard, the scope indicates that the document does not apply to special hazards. If you look at the 2021 standard, still doesn't apply to special hazards, but doesn't apply to class 7 or 8 buildings that have a volume of more than 108,000 meters cube. Now, all right. You know how I talk about risk? In the special hazards space, when the fire services deal with industry, and industry has spent $1 billion developing and they drag 10 people into the fire brigades, and we ask them, how many hydrants are you going to flow? Doesn't matter what the risk is, they'll go, we're using open yard tables 3.3 and that's 3 hydrants to flow. And we go, no. So one of the things we did with the ABCB, or AFAC argued with the ABCB, was that you can't write AS2419 for every building being built. It is not possible. 3 hydrants to flow. They've just built the Amazon large isolated building out in Western Sydney, which I sat in the first design meeting and I went, I know what's coming here, from the group of hydraulic consultants that walked in and sat down. We got around talking about hydrant system and they gladly rattled off all the provisions, ring main, blah, 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 et cetera, 30 litres a second. I said, so 30 litres a second, do you think this is appropriate for this building that's now the largest building in the Southern Hemisphere? It was like deathly silence. I said, well, you haven't considered like the footprint, the robots, the whole lot. So we took arguments to the ABCB saying, you cannot write a deemed to satisfy provision for every building in the space. At some point, you have to accept performance. A group of wise people in the room coming up with a design and addressing the tigers and the snakes and the sharks in the building. So these ones that follow were risk arguments supported by the ABCB. So how did we come up with 108 cubic metres? If you dig into clauses on the large isolated buildings in the National Construction Code, you'll find that's the number. So that's what it was agreed to. So 7 and 8 is greater than 108,000 performance. Now we've got a guy called Michael Stuckings from FM Global on FP009. He's big into risk, and FM's big concern is automatic storage and retrieval systems and top loading and robots and all that sort of stuff. So we just rolled in a whole heap of photos to the ABCB and said, look, they're building buildings now where fireys cannot even get into the middle of the building because of the amount of storage. You know how they condense it up and do whatever. We can't do that. So ABCB again agreed, yep, if you're going to start whacking automatic storage and retrieval systems into large isolated buildings, outside the scope of the standard, you're going to have to sit down with your design team and say, oh, fire brigades have said automatic storage and retrieval systems are a risk that was not there in 2005. We need to come up with some sort of improved way to address this risk. And one of the arguments with the ABCB was, you know, I don't know, there's 60, 70 people in this room with varying 20 years. That's a lot of experience. Now, someone's going to come up with a very smart idea at some point in the future about how to address these risks. And the aim is when that smart idea starts to get accepted by the fire services, everyone on a repetitive basis, then that provision gets whacked into AS2419 2027, which will be Dave's next standard. And then the last one was about buildings having an effective height of more than 135 metres. So the height argument came around originally to relay pumps, and what international standards basically say, they basically infer that once you go above a certain height, it's tanks and pumps up the building. If you do a bit of a Google around, you'll find those massive towers in the Middle East. It's tank to tank to tank and blah, blah, blah. So what was agreed to height limit the standard was to 135 metres or 3 pressure zones, and that was based on 3 pressure zones of 45 metres. And the 45 metre reduction from 50 was in response to some people in industry saying, we can't really design 50 metre pressure zones with the 1300 kPa maximum pressure at no flow. It makes it too hard on the pump curve, but that's a bit beyond my level of skill. So the scope is significantly changed. It limits the standard. So if you're operating in those spaces, then you're going to have to do performance solutions. There is informative appendixes hinting at maybe ways you could do the design. Yeah, so that's me. That's 35 minutes. So what page are we up to? We're 4 of 25. So you'll get a document with another 21 pages of AS2419 said this, AS2419 2021 says this. So done. Happy. Oh, get out. And to the, yeah, sorry. No, only one, sorry. Sorry, your name is? Hey, Charlie, no worries.
If we adopt 2021, we don't need to go through any fire energy solutions or alternative solutions?
No, at the moment, so it's not referenced by the NCC, but the fire brigades, if you ever go to Fire and Rescue New South Wales internet site, you go to fire safety. Does this have the internet, Nick? Does this have the internet? All right, well, come up here. I'll show you where it is. So this is just for everyone. So you can have a look and you go, this is where it is. But basically the statement saying, if you can apply 2021, happy days. So we actually advocated, all right, so sorry, I'll do you. So if you end up on this internet page, okay. So in that list down there, I'm done moving it. You'll find a statement about 2021.
That one?
Keep going. Hydrant systems in existing buildings, blah, blah, blah. Maybe appropriate authority, try to see all this shit too, and you should reckon. Oh, a new premises, sorry, 2021. So there's a whole heap of statements in there. I probably should have said, one of the drivers for the rewrite of AS2419 was one of my previous bosses was a bloke named Greg Buckley, and he met with the AHC representatives at the time who were complaining about how long it took Fire and Rescue New South Wales to process a 188. And in that discussion, it was basically agreed that maybe we should try and fix the standard, and all the commonly agreed to 188s are now incorporated into this document as well. So it was trying to improve process. So that was another reason for the change. But if you look in that space, you'll find a whole heap of things, and Fire and Rescue New South Wales will continually try and upgrade that space. It's not that we don't like you and don't want to talk to you. It's just like we're a small band of people and we're supposedly servicing a state and we can't do it. So just like you're making your guidance notes, we're doing the same thing, saying, look, if you do this, it's fine. So, yeah. Others? Sorry, no.
Just a couple. I don't know if you want to pull the files up or not, but 5.1, we've had a look through
5 point in the current in the
2021, 5.1. We haven't got to
so
the,
first of all, if there's any errors, it's Dave Woods' standard. Okay, that's the first one.
it's probably more of an interpretation thing, which that's false. So I think the way we read it was that you cannot
Control F.
use the existing fire hydrant
It might be able to
in
search.
the building.
Oh,
Wondering if that's
Sorry,
okay.
you can't use IT. I'm sorry, I'm just struggling over here. Okay,
5.1.
5.1.
You did 5.13, we don't cancel it.
The way that we ran it was that it couldn't reuse an existing pipe under the tank of the building in an existing building.
So for the first, the first point I'll say is this is for new builds. Like you've got to understand that when AS2419 or any Australian standard is written, I understand that industry operates in a upgrade existing building space. So what clause do we want? 5.
Part of the constructed of new materials.
Oh.
So that's what we kind of.
Do you want to speak to that one, Dave?
It's already got a hydrant in the top floor. You have to replace the existing tank. Good.
Who would have thought differing opinions in a room? So this came about because the ABCB, can you remember the conversation, Dave? Because the ABCB wanted to get rid of reference to new materials. Why can't they use whatever? And then we dragged up a whole heap of standards that were currently referenced by the NCC that made reference to new materials, like the sprinkler standard. But basically what we're arguing was, if you're going to, again, this is for new builds, if you're going to, you can't then go, well, let's go and find the scrap tank from down the road and drag it in. This is not about an existing building. Like Fire and Rescue New South Wales would not go, oh, you're upgrading the building, you've got a tank there and the space is only this big and it's concrete. No, that'll just stay.
And one other one, I don't know if you can jump to 7.3.4, Nick. We were pretty confused about this one. It talks about the number of boosters on sites, particularly where you have multiple buildings.
Okay, so this is the cop-out clause, all right? So, no, it's 7. It's about multiple boosters. A bit further.
5.3.
Yeah.
There you go, 7.3.4.
Yep, this one, 734.
Yeah.
All right, so let's think about a university campus. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to write a design document for industry. And you go, why are you laughing, Tom?
I know this story already. I've listened to it a few times about this one.
So you go, how do we write something that can be applied? So obviously there's 3 possible solutions. One is you put a booster assembly at the side entrance and it serves all the buildings. Okay, that's easy and you can tick it off. Happy days. The other one is you put a booster in front of every building that requires a booster assembly because of flow or you can't get coverage. Like think of university campus, they got big buildings and little buildings. So if there's a big building and needs a booster assembly, you put it in front of those buildings. So they're the 2 easy ones. All right, so one at the main entrance serves all the sites, or one at every building that requires a booster assembly under the requirements of the standard. Now, the third option is you go, well, you can just make up your mind. You can have a booster at the front that serves the front quarter, and then you can put some others around the space. You can't write that clause. You know, it just becomes, it's not possible to write a prescriptive document and say that, because you may as well just say, do what you want. Now, from a fire service perspective, and I've had some interesting comments over the years from designers saying, but you're not letting us design. I'm saying, hang on a minute, let's think about this from a response perspective. In the nirvana world of the fire service, it would be the fire brigades would drive down the road and find the same hydrant system in a lot of buildings. They'd all be the same, because that would mean we'd become operationally efficient. We would go, oh yeah, I've seen that design before. That was in the building, you know, not like, what is this one doing? So the design or aim of AS2419 is to create repeating patterns in the built environment. Like, and I know some of you may like to design and create your opera, but from the Buffy Fireys perspective, we would like to go down and see the same design repeated continually in the same sorts of buildings. because it just means when the big rad truck turns up, like, oh, 2 in, 2 out, dead end rising pipes in stairs, blah, 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 pumping series. Happy days. We've got it. We understand it. Where at the moment, there's a broad potpourri of hydrant system design being designed by all sorts of different kind of things. And we're trying to go that way. Does that make any sense? All right. Done?
I like your comment around go with the standard, and that the standard actually doesn't cover everything that performance requirements the MCC might wish to accommodate. That's one of the things that we're really struggling with, and getting our industry as well to agree with that, hey, a DTS provision doesn't actually give you, hopefully Tom's not listening. That a DTS provision doesn't actually give you the solution for class 1 to 9. It might give you a solution for certain classes, and the rest falls back on a performance-based solution.
I agree with you. Like when I first started in standards, my belief was we'll write a prescriptive requirement for everything, happy days, no dramas. But as you go along, you realise it ain't that. It's so difficult to do that. And I believe this is for probably sprinkler standards, you know, the things from industry, they go, we want it codified because it's easy. It gets easy approval. It gets. But the interesting thing, the built space is, you know, who knows what they'll be building with in 5 years and 10 years time, and the designs that are appearing. My belief, and again, these opinions Mark Porter, you know, and I'm not going to be around, you know, so, but the reality is you can't write a standard for all circumstances. And this goes back to my earlier point where industry go, no, the deemed to satisfy provisions, that's all I have to think about. If I just pick one of them, happy days, I'm all good because it was in the AS 2419 DTS thing. But what we're trying to say is maybe you need to think a bit more deeply about your design and go, is this the most appropriate solution? Like if you think about 2005, it wasn't written for podium developments with, you know, 7 towers on it, you know, 4-level car parks and things like that. And I firmly believe that we still haven't addressed those issues. But the ABCB, if you want to try and get in anything into the ABCB, it gets to an argument of costs and all sorts of stuff, and it's difficult. But I don't think you can just pick your most easiest complying DTS provisions and meet the performance requirements. I firmly believe that. And that'll only ever be challenged if someone gets hurt at a fire in the fire space. But it'll get challenged in other spaces, probably with regards to your balconies. There's a young guy at our work who bought an apartment out at near Parramatta, and they got water problems off the balcony. You know, so the argument will become, are the deemed as, if you knowing them know that deemed to satisfy provisions don't work and you keep applying it, like who's negligent? When, yeah, so.
Well, that's going to be the problem. Insurers start to pick up on the work and research. You know? I mean, the commissioner said 80% of buildings have leaks. 90% of the root cause is design. You know, the remainder is lack of standards, and the provisions and standards, people actually doing proper risk-based engineering to use performance requirement or performance solution. This is my opinion.
But you have a look how, you know, Dave didn't have a child when we started rewriting AS 2419. He's just about to graduate high school, isn't he? So, yeah, standards are generally a slow process, and where standards are typically playing catch up. You know, so if you're playing 2005 standards to today's buildings, you've got to remember that 2005 standard already had things that probably weren't keeping pace with the design at that point in time. So I'll say, you know, my thoughts now, and I talk to my daughter about this all the time, is life's about managing risk, and you've got to make decisions about how you manage that risk. And I'm with Tom. I don't think the deemed to satisfy provisions in a lot of cases address the risk in a building, not just in fire, in all sorts of space. And, you know, how that plays out down the track legally, I've got no idea. But the performance requirements are pretty clear, you know. You've got to achieve something that achieves this. And if you haven't achieved it, despite you applying deemed to satisfy, I don't know, man. So I agree with you, Tom.
I'll take it.
Done? Thanks, everyone. Thanks for calling. Pete.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming tonight. I think we're allowed to be here till 9:30, so you can hang around and chat. As a reminder, we've got the Adelaide meeting next Tuesday night for anyone that wants to fly, because again, you get 2 tickets as affiliates to any meeting in Australia, and then members in New South Wales, members of Australia. So you're welcome to go to any of the other meetings as well. And then Hobart was, I think it's the 31st of March on Thursday, but yeah, anyway, end of the month at Hobart Entertainment Centre. I can't remember where, but you'll get the invite shortly anyway. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming. To touch on, so the joke before about David's son, I think he's 14 this year, and you did legitimately start this standard essentially, yeah, 16 years ago. So for people who haven't sat on the standard, because I now have insight, I've been on the gas standard for 2 years. And the day I started, I went down to Melbourne for 3 days straight. And all we did for 3 days was read comments that people had submitted on the standard. And I've been on probably to 16 days worth of meetings in the last 2 years. And the whole time, it's just been reading comments from the public. And that standard, I think they'd been working on 8 years when I started sitting on the standard 2 years ago. And that should be published this year. So the standards process is incredibly tedious. Yeah, and then you've got the comments that people make. The committee comes up with an assessment of how that should be rewritten, and then that goes back to the content writers, and then they might change it, but change the intent of that clause, and it comes back to the standard, and the people on the stand go, no, that's not how we wanted it written. But that editor, their job is to make the editing comply with the rules of how standards need to be written. So then you can find yourself going back and forth, but like me talking at the moment. So anyway, thanks a lot for coming. It's good to see you all, and we'll see you again in 2 months' time. So thank you.